It's October, a month filled with frightening stories about things that go bump in the night. Here in the woods of southern Vermont, I discovered a stone tower. It was built many years ago by the patients of Vermont's first insane asylum. Legend has it that these woods are haunted, and if you look up to the tower window, you might see a ghostly figure jumping from it and then vanishing mid-air. I was beginning to second-guess my decision to come out into these woods by myself. And as my fears began to overtake my sensibilities, well, I scooted out of those woods as quickly as I could. Safely back home at Old Stonewell Farm, I turned to the very thing that always has the power to ease my fears, God's Word. But I couldn't get that tower out of my mind. And the more I researched, I discovered that that tower belonged to Retreat Farm. Retreat Farm was a unique model of treating the insane back in the early 1800s by having patients come and work the farm. Now, I had to share with you this hope garden because it is overgrown, and that gave me hope because my garden is far from perfect. But as I explored the many trails of Retreat Farm and thought about how the patients who were struggling with despair and doubt and depression came here to heal, how many times it is in nature that I find healing. While the treatment of these patients was controversial, having them work the farm, were they being exploited or were they being healed? I tend to think that this was a wonderful place to retreat to heal. When we do take a step back, when we are quiet in nature, we can hear God's voice. And as I pretended to be a mountain, I reached up to the sky. I felt my own fears subsiding. May you join me too, to stand up and reach tall with your hands to heaven. Cry out to God. And know if fears and insecurities are haunting you, you are not alone. We really don't hear a lot about Corrie ten Boom anymore. I remember growing up hearing a lot about her story, how she used to help her Jewish neighbors hide away in the family home in Holland during World War II. And in fact, she wrote a book and they made a movie out of it. It was called The Hiding Place. Corrie joined the Dutch resistance when she was in her 50s, and she was later then arrested by the Nazis and put into a concentration camp. Throughout her ordeal, she held on to faith in God, and she even forgave those who held her imprisoned in the concentration camps. The other day, I used a quote for a devotional that I was working on for my day job. And the art director who was laying it out, he asked about who this woman was. And I was surprised because I've always heard of her. And that's what got me thinking that we don't really tell her story anymore about her faith and her courage. I bring her up to you because the one quote that I used for a devotional that I was working on was this: when a train goes through a tunnel and it gets dark, you don't throw away the ticket and jump off. You sit still and you trust the engineer. I love that image of being on a train and going through a tunnel and it gets dark. And I remember in Switzerland traveling throughout the country on, via train. And it's so true. You would go into a tunnel and get dark, and the tunnels were really long going through the mountains, and then you would come out on the other side. Most recent trip to Switzerland, my husband and I, we were leaving Lucerne, and it was cloudy and misty, and the sun wasn't shining at all. And we were heading to the Italian part of Switzerland, Lugano. We, sure enough, entered into a tunnel, and it was dark. When we emerged finally from that long tunnel, the sun was shining and you could see the mountains, and it was just beautiful. But when I used Corey's quote about going through a tunnel, and when it gets dark, you just don't throw away the ticket and jump off, but you trust the engineer. You trust that the engineer knows what to do and where you're going. She's basically talking about God. When times get dark, when we are in trouble, when we feel like we don't know if the sun is ever going to shine again, we just don't give up. But we trust the engineer. We trust the one who is leading us on. I had a week off and I had a stay vacation. I didn't go anywhere. I thought I would get a lot more done though than what I accomplished. And about halfway through my staycation, I felt my mood just dipping. And I think it was because I overestimated everything that I could get done. And that's not good at all. So don't overestimate and don't load up your to-do list with tons of things. It will only get you frustrated. I began worrying already about returning to work. Now, being a writer, you have to write on demand, and that gets scary sometimes, because sometimes you feel like you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't even write a sentence. So when I went for my walk, I began to list every negative that was in my head, every fear that I had, that I'm not good enough, that I won't be able to write a sentence, that my words will be empty, that today is the day that I'm actually going to fail at something, which is okay to fail. We only learn and grow through failure. But I had all these negatives and the anxiety was getting worse and worse. And that's when I decided to take every single fear and negative thing that I was thinking and to counteract it with a promise from God. So today's the day I'm going to fail. Well, no, trust God. Trust with all your might that He is leading you. Today is the day that I won't be able to even write a sentence. Well, God, you are the one who inspires me. I am not worthy enough. Well, you have called me by name, and God, you know every hair on my head. Before I was even born, you knitted me in the womb. You had plans for me. So every negative thing that was entering my mind, every anxiety that was welling up inside of me, I just made an effort and chased it away with a positive and turning to the promises of God. Because when I enter that dark tunnel, I'm not going to throw away my ticket. I'm going to trust who the engineer is. And so I wanted to share that with you, especially in the month of October that has begun, because October is Mental Health Awareness Month. And so many people are struggling with mental health issues, with depression, with fear, with anxiety. And even now, as I come to you, I think about the trend that is emerging. There are now more climate chaplains. A chaplain is the person who comes to another person's side to minister to them. Hospitals have chaplains to pray with patients. There's even animal chaplains to walk alongside a person who has to say goodbye to their fur baby. People who are so afraid of how the climate is changing and how the storms are getting more intense, that it just is weighing on so many people, and we are so afraid of tomorrow. And so today when I come to you, of course, I come with a heavy heart with all that is happening in the southeast part of our country, in the Carolinas, in Tennessee, in Florida, in Georgia. And my apologies if I have missed anybody. I just can't fathom what is happening. And my prayers are ascending for all those who are in those situations right there, who are cut off from the rest of the world who might not have enough food or water. I just am holding everyone in my prayers. And if by chance my friends that you are in that area and by chance you are watching this, I want you to know that my heart is with you, and I wish there was more that I could do. And if you have family or friends, dear viewers, who are in that situation, in those areas that are affected, please know that I am praying, that there is power in prayer. But a lot of people are worrying today about so much, about the unknowns of tomorrow. And the very fact that we need climate chaplains says a lot, that people are afraid that there won't be a tomorrow. I heard from one pastor that there was some teens in her youth group who weren't even considering having children anymore, because why bring children into this world? And I can relate to that. I sometimes wonder what the future would be for our children, but then I have to have faith. I have to have hope in a God that is still in control, that perhaps that child born today will be the answer for tomorrow, would be the one to solve something or bring peace to the world. We just don't know what God's plans are. But there are worries and there are concerns, and so many people, I'm afraid, just want to take that ticket that Corrie ten Boom talks about when they enter a dark tunnel, take that ticket and toss it out and jump off. Hang on, because there will be hope. You will get through that tunnel and the light will shine, the sun will come out. And just know that God is still in control. Now, it's easy for me to sit here and say all of this, but honestly, when the camera goes off and when I say goodbye to you all, I wish that everything that I tell you, I wish that I practiced perfectly, but I don't. And I guess that is why I share this with you, because I do struggle all the time, and my anxiety has been rising. All the unknowns, people are just grasping at any little promise. They're perhaps even giving up, which is not good at all. And I don't know, I wish I had the answer for all of you. But I guess I do have the answer, and the answer is we put our trust in God. The answer is to turn our eyes to the hills. From there, our help will come, as the psalmist proclaims. And to take the negatives that are all around us and then to counter it with a God positive, with something beautiful that God has made. Just like I did with my anxiety bubbling in me with all the negatives that were entering my mind, when I made the effort to take everything that was getting me down and turning it around by, citing a promise from God. We need to do that with the news today as well. We always hear the negative news. Well, let's counteract it and let's search hard for the positive. Let's try to hold on to that glimmer of God at work. Let's try to really see with our eyes someone being Christ to another. When something bad happens in community, God is there, and we see it through the actions of compassion and help and love that strangers show those in need. So a colleague of mine who is in North Carolina, she walked down the hill to her church, and it was nighttime and she wanted to pray in the sanctuary. So she turned on the lights and she prayed. And after she was done praying for the safety of everyone, for the emergency workers, for the families who are trapped, for those who are cut off, after she got done with all her prayers, she went back home. And when she entered the house, she said to her husband, "Oh, I forgot to turn off the church light." And her husband said, "Don't bother going out again to turn off the light. Leave the light on, shining through the windows." And she did. She said, In her little way, her forgetting to turn off the light was the God moment of making scripture real, to proclaim out into the community there is a light that will keep on shining and no darkness can overcome it. It's hard, though, to hold on to that light. And I guess when I wanted to give you a scary story about Vermont's first insane asylum, it didn't turn out to be a scary story. In fact, it turned out to be a story that tugged at my heart, because I thought about all these patients who were in this hospital and how they needed help, and they found help. And they found help by being given a job farming, being out in nature, in God's creation, working with their hands, growing something, being fulfilled, finding worth. Now, there was some controversy about that kind of treatment. Were these patients being exploited? We can argue that. My husband does. But I know the healing that I find in nature. And I know that when you're not feeling of any value or worth, that when you are given a job, a task, or recognized that you are capable of doing something and given responsibility, you find that worth inside, knowing that you do matter, that you do make a difference, can make a difference. So when I stumbled upon the cemetery where some of these patients were buried, and I saw the monument that said for all the men and women who found a place of peace, who were given help, that tugged at my heart, because so many people today are crying silently for help. So many people are suffering silently. Many times I put a smile on my face, and many times you might think, oh, what a beautiful life I have here in Vermont. What a great little place I have, and not a care in the world. But again, when the camera goes off, there are a lot of cares, a lot of fears, and a lot of struggles. And let me tell you, this old house, there are a lot of repairs that need to be made, and there are a lot of issues that need tending to. I try not to focus too much on all that, but this isn't a peaceful, idyllic place. There's always something to be done. It's a work in progress. I think it was C.S. Lewis who once wrote in a book of his that it's one thing to feel pain, to have like a cut on your finger or some physical ailment, and you can be treated. You can go to the doctor for it. But when it's the pain in your soul, when it's a pain in your heart, when it's a silent pain, it's harder to get help. There's still stigma to admit that you don't have it all together, that you need someone to lift you up out of the miry pit and put your feet once again on solid rock. Another one of my favorite Psalms. The Lord turned to me and he heard my cry, and he put a new song, a song of praise in my mouth. When I look around now, there aren't any retreat farms anymore. In fact, that farm has turned into a community center offering yoga and concerts. And I guess that's great too. But the people who are going there are not necessarily the ones who are in need of community. There's still so many people on the outskirts who are needing a friend. I have to ask, what about the real community that needs to be built? Not just a place to go and have fun and meet up with like-minded people, but what about of those who are suffering quietly? How do we include them into what we call community? A few years ago, when I was going through a tunnel, a dark tunnel, and I was holding my ticket and I was trying hard to trust the engineer who was getting me through, I came across this song by Lauren Daigle, a contemporary Christian singer. And I loved her lyrics so much. Her song is You Say. And it says, I keep fighting voices in my mind that say I'm not enough. Every single lie tells me that I will never measure up. Am I more than just the sum of every high and every low? Remind me once again just who I am, because I need to know. You say I am loved when I can't feel a thing. You say I am strong when I think I am weak. You say I am held when I am falling short. When I don't belong, you say that I am yours. And so, my friends, here is your reminder this day of who you are. You are a child of God, and God will carry you through whatever you're going through. Speak up when you need help. Know that you are not alone. And as Corrie ten Boom once wrote, when you're going through that dark tunnel on a train and you're tempted to let go of that ticket and jump off, don't. Trust the one who is leading that train through the darkness and back out into the light. Thanks be to God.